Welcome to BOJTV Trending News for top stories in local, regional and international news, along with sports and local weather forecast. I'm Carla. Coming up in our local trending news, Reid's former driver enraged at a fraudulent use of his name in CMU contracts. Integrity Commission calls for corruption courts. Man who reportedly threatened another man with firearm in Mount Salem, St. James arrested, and students remain a priority at CMU amidst ongoing investigations. The ex-driver for former Education Minister Reid has decided to speak out and stating his anger at what he says was the fraudulent use of his name to secure contracts with the CMU, the Caribbean Maritime University. The former driver Mahadevan McQueen's name became associated with the current scandal engulfing the CMU and Mr. Reid after questions were asked at the Parliamentary Committee on Wednesday about whether Mr. McQueen was contracted to provide catering services for a program run by the university. Mr. McQueen, who spoke to one radio program on Friday, says he knows nothing about the catering contract with the CMU. Mr. McQueen said that he met the former Education Minister at a Jamaica Teachers Association JTA meeting. Mr. McQueen was working as a driver when Mr. Reid became the president of the association. He said Mr. Reid later invited him to work at Jamaica College as a night watchman when he became principal of the school. Mr. Reid was appointed Education Minister. Mr. McQueen was seconded to the ministry to work as his driver from 2016 to 2018. However, Mr. McQueen said he had no association with the CMU. Most defiantly, he said he was never a caterer. The former driver said the first time he heard about the contract with the CMU was when investigators showed up at his home asking him questions earlier this year. He said they took him to their offices, where he was bombarded with questions in relation to invoices reportedly done in his name. He added that he was shocked when he found out about the contracts. He did not disclose the sums claimed on the invoices. However, he said it was not a lot of money. In the meantime, former Minister of Education Reid will know his fate by this Thursday after the Director of Public Prosecution hand over a report to the Financial Investigation Division, FID, on its opinion on the criminal investigation being carried out in his alleged corruption involvements. The Office of the DPP has assigned 4 senior prosecutors to review documents presented by the FID in relation to the investigation. On Thursday, the 4 senior prosecutors briefed Paula Llewellyn on the materials presented to them, and the DPP is now reporting that it is pushing to submit its report to FID by this Thursday. The Mount Salem police in St. James have reported that criminal charges have been laid against a man who was taken into custody in connection with the seizure of an illegal firearm at his home in Mount Salem on a Friday morning. The police say they have still not yet released the name of the accused, as he may be placed before an identification parade. Reports are that about 9 a.m. on Friday, the police responded to a report that a 34-year-old accused threatened another man with a firearm. On reaching his house located along 9 Main Street in Mount Salem, a search was carried out of his room, which led to the seizure of a Bertha Thunder 9mm pistol fitted with a magazine containing 9 live rounds. The often repeated call for special courts to be established to deal with corruption cases has received the backing of the Integrity Commission, which is mandated to promote and enhance the standards of ethical conduct for parliamentarians, public officials and other persons. In its first annual report to Parliament, Chairman of the Commission, former Court of Appeal Judge Justice Carl Harrison, argued that special courts dedicated to corruption matters would be a key measure in the fight against the scourge. If you are serious about fighting corruption, it is a review of the Commission that special corruption courts should be established to adjudicate upon all corruption-related offences. Parish courts are already overburdened and have a serious backlog of cases, argued Harrison. The call for corruption courts is one of several recommendations from the Commission in its 2018-2019 report to Parliament. Carnival Cruise Line has partnered with the Caribbean Maritime Institute, CMU, to recruit employees to fill vacancies on board their fleet of passenger vessels. This is the first cruise line to employ graduates of a university, and for acting president Ibrahim Ajaguna, this demonstrates the integrity of the CMU brand and the confidence international partners have in the university's ability to produce a competent and qualified industrial-ready graduates. This, he says, is as a result of the university remaining focused on its key stakeholders, its students, keeping them as priority while the investigations are being conducted. Ashley Spencer, senior recruitment manager at Carnival, one of the largest and leading cruise lines in customer service, visited the university recently to select new talent for the cohort of candidates who passed a series of psychometric testing, self-assessment, critical thinking and reaction exercises. This is the second major partnership with a cruise line since the start of the year. In March, President and CEO of Royal Caribbean also visited CMU to discuss employment opportunities on board Royal Caribbean International Cruise Line, which could see several CMU students working on board their vessels in the near future. Those were your top stories making the local trending news. Now join us for news from across the region as well as our international story, sports and local weather forecast. From across the region, the first train using new equipment from China pulled out of Havana Saturday, hauling excited passengers on the start of a 516-mile journey to the eastern end of the island as the government tries to overhaul the country's aging and decrepit rail lines. The 14 gleaming Chinese cars and a locomotive departed the city's central train station and will wind their way through the 9 cities before ending in Guantanamo 15 hours later. It has 4 air-conditioned wagons and a rolling restaurant car. Previously, the trip could take days because of equipment breakdowns and track erosion. It marks the first step of an overhaul Cuba's communist government started earlier last year, repairing some 2,600 miles of aging tracks and dozens of tumble-down stations scattered around the island. But much remains to be done to bring Cuba's ailing rail system up to acceptable standards, with miles of rusting tracks and just a handful of reliably equipped trains. In international news, federal prosecutors preparing for a bail fight today say evidence against financier Jeffrey Epstein is growing stronger by the day after several more women contacted them in recent days to say he abused them when they were underage. Prosecutors say Epstein, 66, is a flight risk and danger to the community and should remain incarcerated until he is tried on charges that he recruited and abused dozens of underage girls in New York and Florida in the early 2000s. His lawyers counter that their client has not committed crimes since pleading guilty to soliciting a minor for prostitution charges in Florida in 2008, and that the federal government is reneging on a 12-year-old deal not to prosecute him. They say he should be allowed to await a trial under house arrest in his $77 million Manhattan mansion with electronic monitoring. Over in our sporting report, England won the World Cup for the first time ever yesterday, holding their nerve to seal a thrilling super over victory against New Zealand after the final ended in a tie. Ian Morgan's side finished on 241 all out in pursuit of New Zealand's 241 for 8, sending the match at Lord's to a 6-ball shootout for each side. England's Ben Stokes and Josh Butler took 15 off Trent Bolt's over before Jofra Archer stepped up to bowl against Martin Guptill and Jimmy Neesham. With 2 runs required off the final ball, wicket-keeper Josh Butler and Jason Roy combined to run out Guptill as he came back for the second. That meant the host nation won on superior boundary count, sparking wild scenes of celebration at the home of cricket. England, who had often cited a humiliating defeat by New Zealand at the 2015 World Cup as the catalyst for their climb to the top of the one-day international rankings, finally have a World Cup win to go with their 3 losing appearances in the 1979, 1987 and 1992 finals. On our local weather forecast for this morning, insignificant feature: a tropical wave east of Jamaica. The tropical wave is expected to move across the island today. Additionally, there is a low-level jet stream across the central Caribbean. The forecast for this morning will see partly cloudy skies and windy condition. During this afternoon, scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms across sections of most parishes, windy across southern parishes. Tonight becoming fair. Maximum temperature expected for Kingston as well as Montego Bay today is 34 degrees Celsius. That was BOJTV's trending news. Your top local, regional and international stories, as well as a sports report and weather forecast. Until next time, I'm Carla. Thanks for watching. We're here to